he's just kind of walking the countryside in England and realizing, wait a minute, if I just walk on a straight line here, all of these different sites line up, churches and cathedrals and all that were built on top of other ancient sites that is new to build on top for a couple different reasons. When you have them cross like that, these create more powerful centers. So that's what you find in the Giza Plateau and in Egypt. That's why they built the pyramids right there. And Bermuda Triangle is one of those locations where the ley lines are supposed to cross, and it's really, really fascinating to see those connections like that.
It's funny. I was reading in the part of your book where you were interviewing that guy at the Perrin farmhouse in Rhode Island, and for people who don't know, the Perrin farmhouse is where the movie The Conjuring was based off of, and I actually was this is crazy. I was one of the people who brought that property to New Line. I was working with the person who owned the intellectual property. We had the case files for the Warrens, and it ended up being a mess, but we're the ones that said this is the case to start with. We're the ones that were like, we called James Wan, we got the Hayes brothers working on it, and then New Line was finally like, okay, fine, we'll give you 19. They gave us like peanuts, but we were like, this is going to be one of the greatest horror movies ever made. And it was, I think to this day, it really was a fantastic movie. And I'm not a big horror fan, but I felt like it had everything, but it's crazy. You were in that house. So you spoke to, and guys, just bear with me. This is so on my mind since I read this, because it's such a synchronicity. And also Mike was supposed to fly here twice, and for reasons we can't quite comprehend, both flights were canceled. So he was supposed to be sitting here in the studio, and we're doing this over virtual because, when all else fails, you can't beat them. Right. So I just thought it was interesting that, these things happened. And then I found out about that, and I was like, who knows what's going on, man. But, it's good to finally have you on the show. Thank you for beaming in, Mike.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Faust. It was pretty crazy. We finally made it happen, and we did at least meet face to face for.
We did. We shook hands in LA at the Conscious Life Expo. Right. Yes, we did. Yeah. And so a little background, Mike. Mike's an incredible author. He was also in the Air Force, right, Mike?
Yeah, 6 years.
6 years in the Air Force. He's been around the block. He's hung out with some really incredible people and learned a lot. And he has more than a few books out. Mike, you want to give everyone a little more background about your books?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Actually, my first published book was back in 2004, which was a mystery novel. And I do still work on some fiction on the side in the middle of writing some sci-fi fantasy. But
nice.
My research, the other books are really, they delve into the concepts about consciousness, ancient wisdom, lost history, paranormal, supernatural, triangle areas around the world. So I really dabble in a lot of different things because I believe everything is connected. So I have a platform that I've put together. It's called The Connected Universe, and really explores all of these different esoteric topics and try to find the common patterns between each, and how there's so much more going on in this world around us that we don't normally see, that's hidden from us, and just trying to bring that to light.
Yeah. Oh man, there's so much in what you just said. We perceive this little tiny minuscule of light with our eyes, and our senses are attuned to it. But you could make a very safe statement and say we are missing most of reality. Every day we walk around in this incredible human technology we call the body, but we're missing most of it, and some people realize that, and they start to attune to some of those other things that may not be directly linked to the five senses, and I think that's kind of where this world gets really interesting. And as soon as people stop fighting over antiquated resources and fake energy grids, right. I hope the whole world takes an interest, because this is the future. This is where it's at, So I really admire your work and your books, and I think I mean, so I've been to Alaska, and one of your books is on the Alaska Triangle. And it's called the Alaska Triangle, right? There's no
Alaska's Mysterious Triangle. Yeah. Well,
Alaska's,
I was on the television show The Alaska Triangle, and I just
That's
didn't
right.
want to straight rip their name. So yeah, I went with
Oh, okay,
Alaska's
okay,
Mysterious Triangle. Yeah.
yeah. And it's a very interesting place with a very specific kind of mystical energy. Let's say,
Yes.
it's a dark place. I mean, like when I say dark, I don't mean like the forces of evil. I just mean in general. If you were to measure the
During the
light,
winter time, it's literally dark. I mean, it's just all the time.
yeah. So it's got an interesting mystique about it. But you were actually there as well. You spent a lot of time there. And
when I was in
so
the Air Force, right?
yeah, tell us a little bit about this, because I think everyone's heard of the Bermuda Triangle, and they've heard of the anomalies, and most people are like, yeah, it's like in the same category as Bigfoot. And I'm like, yeah, well, do you know about Bigfoot, or is it just something you've written off? But it's fascinating to me. Most people have not heard of the Alaska Triangle, and I think it's a great place to start.
Yeah, we could definitely start there. And yeah, I was stationed in the Air Force at Elmendorf. They're right outside of Anchorage from 1992 to 1995, which instantly dates me, I know.
That's okay.
Yeah, straight out of high school, really. And yeah, it was really a fascinating sort of culture shock. Stepping off the plane November 1st, and there's snow everywhere. There was actually mixed in with the snow. There was also ash because Mount Spur, right across the Cook Inlet, had just gone off a couple months beforehand, and there was still ash fallout from that, which was pretty wild. And so, yeah, during my time up there, I got to see and witness a number of different strange things, bizarre things happen. You kind of just chalk it up to only in Alaska. And there was talk at that point. This is again back in the 90s, and they were talking. They didn't so much call it just straight the Alaska Triangle. They were calling it Alaska's Bermuda Triangle, which is kind of funny because Alaska is nowhere near Bermuda. But
no, but it
yeah,
gives people a better idea of what they're dealing with, though.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, and so we've seen over the last 30 years or so more of this nomenclature of different triangle areas of the world, but they've been around forever, and they were just chalked up as mysterious locations. The Dragon's Triangle was once known as the Dragon Sea, and the ancient Chinese actually believed that there were dragons under the sea that were causing all the shipwrecks and different strange things to happen. In fact, here in Cleveland, it was a little over a year ago, they had a special display of it was demonology and all these other types of things within Japanese art. And so went there, checking it out, and I wanted to take a look at the Egyptian exhibit as well. And they had this really long scroll up on the wall, and really right in the middle of it. And it was this journey. It was depicting a story of this journey, basically up into the mountains. But along the way, they encountered the Dragon Sea, and they had fantastic artwork of dragons and guys fighting the dragon. And right in the middle of all of this is a spiral, and this was the ancient symbol for portals,
like a vortex or a portal. Yeah
exactly. We find that throughout all sorts of ancient cultures around the world. So I just find it fascinating. Here's this girl that's thousands of years old, and they're already recognizing the strange electromagnetic anomalies that are right there, creating portals and vortices and things like this.
It's funny. You could see it depicted in many ways. I mean, you could see it, first of all, talked about in different ways throughout the ancient texts, but also in a lot of different artwork and ancient, that we see on the walls. It's like, what is that? Well, some people have a better idea, but it's crazy. Like that people don't realize, I mean, how many people go missing a year in this part of Alaska? It's
Thousands.
like
it's more than twice the national average.
At least twice that. And so, of course, people are like, well, it's Alaska. Yeah, but it's not a tourist track. It's not a hiking. People don't go there. Like the Bermuda Triangle is kind of in a place where, there's a lot of ships that have to go through it, which explains the traffic. But this part of Alaska, There's really
Yeah,
no good explanation for why this amount of people have just literally disappeared.
yeah, because Alaska's a state. Sure, it's largest state in the union, and we don't really have a conceptually, we have a hard time visually just how big it is because whenever you look at it on a map or a globe, it's way up there. And,
Yeah.
a lot of times on a map, they'll throw it down in the corner. So it looks smaller than it really is, but it's 2.5 times the size of Texas. It's massive.
Damn, I forget it's that big. It's huge.
Yeah.
You could probably fit everyone in America right in Alaska.
You probably could. And yet the number of people in Alaska is about the same population as the city of San Francisco.
Yeah. Wow.
So imagine spreading out San Francisco across Alaska. It's crazy. And there's a few centers where people generally live, like Fairbanks and Anchorage, Juneau.
Right.
Which you can only get to Juneau by boat or plane. You can't drive there from Anchorage or anything, which
Right.
is kind of crazy to think about. And then scattered little towns and villages across. But there are some places throughout Alaska that humans haven't walked. We have satellite imagery and things like that, but there are places that humans have not walked because it's just a huge, massive, remote. Yeah. So, the people that go missing up there, sure. Some go out into the woods because they do go on a hike and get eaten by a bear. It happens. So you do have some of that, but it doesn't explain the huge numbers that go missing. And I always throw this one out as an example. There was a yearly in Seward, Alaska, they run the mountain marathon race. And you have all kinds of people that go run this thing, and there's checkpoints along the way and all of this. And it was 2012, and one of the individuals, Michael LeMaitre, just disappeared off the face of the earth.
Disappeared from the race.
From the race. Yeah.
What the
in the middle of a very public race. So they got the search dogs and everything out there, the state troopers.
Like, what the hell? What?
Nothing.
Was there a body of water nearby that they could have, or was it completely?
It's basically it's going up a small mountain there, and then they come back down.
My God.
So they were wondering, did he fall off the path somewhere into a crevasse or something?
They would have found him, or
they would have found his body.
Yeah, some trace of him. I mean, and if it was an animal attack, they would have found blood. They would have found clothes. I mean, it's not like they didn't probably immediately start looking for him. That's wild, man. That's really bizarre.
Those type of things that happen in Alaska, and then all of the missing airplanes, again, far above the national average. Since they started keeping track of the database, there's 44 planes that are still unaccounted for, and they started keeping track of that in the 60s, and there were plenty more from before that aren't counted in those numbers.
Just gone without a trace. No. Damn.
I have no idea. One of the very public ones was in 1950, and this one doesn't count toward that number. And it was a Douglas Skymaster taking off from Elmendorf, and they were headed toward Montana, if I remember correctly. 44 people aboard, which is kind of interesting because that's the same number of missing planes. It's in the database, so it keeps going up. And they had just crossed over the territory from Alaska into Canada around Snag. It's still considered part of the Triangle area, and just went missing. It'd been a fine day. Their last report was, everything's good. We've made our next checkpoint. We're good to go. And then nothing. And again, very bizarre. You had the Americans and the Canadian military both out there looking for him. They were actually they were running exercises at the time, joint war games and things like that. Took the guys off of that, had them out there looking. All kinds of other planes going overhead to try to find it. There was a smaller plane like a week later that went down around that same area where they believed the Skymaster went missing, and they found that one right away.
Right. It's not like it's over the ocean. You're talking about a giant swath of land, most of it, which is, you have everything from frozen tundra to like forests, but at the same time, it's a big old machine. You're looking for specific parts, and if it hit the ground, people are not aware that this is one. So what what do you like? I think of places like, well, obviously the Bermuda Triangle comes to mind. Places that have a long history, and I like even, and this is obviously like probably a different kind of thing, but similar in its supernatural phenomenon. Like the Skinwalker Ranch, obviously,
Right.
is a place where something was there before. The United States government said, "Yeah, this is a great place to set up shop. Let's see what we can do here. Let's see what kind
Right.
of evil shit we can bring into the planet." And they have a history of doing that, but
They do.
obviously something was there, and you
Yeah.
see shows like Stranger Things, and people are like, "Oh, this is really good fiction." And I'm like, "Yeah, you have no idea uh,
Right.
where it comes from, but it's great. It's wild. What do you think? Is happening?
Yeah. So what I believe, I mean, it all starts with the core of the Earth. I mean, we're talking about electromagnetic anomalies. So the core of the Earth, which is a molten ball of iron, is spinning around and around and around, creating our electromagnetic field and shield for the Earth, which is a wonderful thing because if we didn't have that, the sun
That's
would
right.
fry us and we wouldn't exist. So this is a good thing, but as it passes through the Earth's crust and mantle, it's interacting with different metals and minerals, and depending on what metal and what mineral and the quantity of it, it creates different localized electromagnetic fields. So the U.S. Department of the Interior, specifically for Alaska, did surveys up there in the 1960s, only covered about 100,000 square miles. And within that, they identified 5 different magnetic characters. They found what they described as negative anomalies. So yeah, this stuff is measurable. And these places
Wow.
like Bermuda Triangle, Alaska Triangle, the others like Michigan Triangle, Skinwalker Ranch is one that they some speculate about a UFO hidden under the mesa and
Yeah.
all this stuff. And really, I think is probably if it is something extraterrestrial, I think it's a extraterrestrial like meteorite or something like that, ancient
The-
that's buried there in the ground. That again, as the electromagnetism rises through the Earth, interacts with that and creates all the strange
yeah.
activity.
The other thing makes me think of is like, I know that well, there's it's not a correlation, but it's definitely interesting that you know when you see people, and I don't really, it's been a while since I watched any kind of show like this, but you see people who go out and they're like ghost hunters, and they have their little, and sometimes they will carry an EMF reader, to
Mhm.
see if it starts to increase. And sometimes, when there's quote activity, you will see an increase, a spike in that electromagnetic frequency in their detector anyway.
Right.
I used to we used to go out. I used to go on weekend retreats with Dr. Stephen Greer, and he has his different techniques of how he makes contact besides the meditation protocols. But
Right.
but he used to have an old radar detector that he brought with him, like like nobody uses this. My mom used to have one in her car all the time.
Yeah.
The thing was always going off. I'm like, Mom, why don't you just slow down? Like just
Right.
beep, But you bring out a radar detector in the middle of the desert, and it's an interesting thing that happens. Like once you start to get a beep, you're like, huh? Like
Mhm.
it can be used,
Yeah.
to communicate and to detect. So it's funny. He used to have it set up, and it was one of the ways that they would let him know that they were coming in. And we would all kind of look up and see what was happening. But
Very.
there's a correlation, I think. So this is fascinating, man. But you think it has to do with probably what's in the ground? You
Yeah.
don't.
That's
Yeah,
definitely part of it. You're talking about an energy source,
yeah.
electromagnetism. That's one of the reasons why I believe they built things like HARP up there in Alaska. But you
Mm,
also have a lot of other energies. If again, specifically talking Alaska, that are going on up there as well. You have the seismic activities, a lot of earthquakes. I was up there for a 6.7. Sounded like a
wow.
bomb went off. Um, again, the volcanic activity that's up there, which is all throughout the region. So those are energies that are building and building. There's a pressure behind those that are ever present until they release, and then you get the full brunt of it. And then where you're at there in Alaska, the electromagnetism of the Earth is the shield is a little bit thinner, and
Mm.
so it allows the solar wind to bombard the area a bit more, which is why you have the fantastic auroras and things like that up there. So
Oh,
it's just this fantastic cocktail of energy that allows these different things to happen.
yeah. It's very cool. It's very cool. You touch on this in more than one of your books. You talk about it's something I've always found fascinating is the ley lines and people are always talking about the meridians. I saw this. Yeah, I'm sure you've heard. Well, I know you've heard of Mateus de Stefano. He was actually at the, he went on that crazy journey where he was healing and connecting different ley lines and points of the earth that needed to be, which I never quite understood. I mean, I have an idea of what he was doing, but,
Okay.
it would be interesting to see if where he went shows up and on with scientific measurements and instruments to see if he had, actually been brought to or compelled to go to some of these places that do have this kind of anomalous activity happening,
Yeah,
but do you think that's what he was? That's what
yeah,
he's
it's
kind of referring to.
interesting. Yeah, you have people go to some of these ancient sites and will do what they call attunement. So, and I haven't seen the specific things that Matthias was doing there with the ley lines, but those lines are they're ever present. They've been here. The ancients were tapping into these, and it was Alfred Watkins about 100 years ago, as he's just kind of walking the countryside in England, and realizing, wait a minute, if I just walk on a straight line here, all of these different sites line up, whether it's a temple or a church or a cathedral or a stone circle or whatever. And we know that a lot of the uh, churches and cathedrals and all that were built on top of
Yeah,
other ancient sites. It is new to build on top for a couple different reasons. One, we're
a
going
lot
to
of
wipe out
religions
the
too.
old religion. Yeah, yeah, we're going to wipe out the old religion, but also we know that the ancients knew this was a powerful
Right.
location, so we're going to tap into that energy as well for kind of the same purposes, healing and things like that.
Hmm.
It's one of the reasons why people seek out these sorts of locations. And so, yeah, when you have them cross like that, these create more powerful centers. So that's what you find in the Giza Plateau in Egypt. That's why they built the pyramids right there.
Mm.
In some of these other locations, and yeah, Bermuda Triangle is one of those locations where the ley lines are supposed to cross, and so it's really really fascinating to see those connections like that.
Yeah, yeah, and I haven't been to the pyramids in Egypt yet, but everyone who
Why don't you come on our
goes.
tour? You'd love it.
Oh, when is it?
We're going back next March, so almost a
Next
year from
March. Well,
now.
that gives me enough time to try to get permission to go.
There you go.
um, Next March. How long do you guys go for?
It's a 12-day tour,
Oh,
so
cool.
and it's great because we get just our group 2 hours full access to the Great Pyramid. All the chambers are opened up to us. We have a 4-day Nile cruise that's a part of it, and
Nice.
yeah, it's really
That's
cool. So
really cool. That sounds awesome. I love reading books about Egypt, ancient Egypt, and some of my favorite. Because you can get a good what do they call it, a historical fiction, but if you get it from the right person, he's writing from 30 years of research and
right.
archaeology. So I love those books. I've always been reading them. So I'll have to look into that. But so when you walked into the Great Pyramid, can you like literally viscerally feel like the energy shift, like when you get into some of those tombs, like
You can, yeah.
yeah.
It's really amazing. Now, the first time that I went to Egypt, it was hard to tell. Okay, am I feeling the energy or am I just awestruck?
Am I just excited? Yeah.
Right, because there's so many of those places that you walk into and you're just staring up and you're like, how in the world did they build this? It's absolutely incredible. And the Great Pyramid, it's part of the energy that you're feeling is the fact that it's really hot and humid inside. which the ancient Egyptians have to be rolling over in their graves because they had built it in such a way before tourism really kicked up into it. It maintained, no matter what the temperature was outside, it maintained 67 degrees inside. It was just a wonderful feat of engineering. But with all the tourism, you have thousands of people in there all day long, and just kind of hangs in the air. So there's that. But when you are walking around and you're like walking up the grand gallery through, this massively long corbelled chamber, you start to feel the sort of resonance around you, kind of close in around you, and then you dip under through the antechamber, which most people just don't even think about. But when you take a look at the way that it's built and constructed and the way that it's carved out, it's like, okay, this had some other functionality. This wasn't a tomb. There's something going on here. And then,
God, do people still believe it's a tomb? Do people still buying that?
Some people do, yes.
My God.
When you get into that king's chamber, it's just, you're in awe. You really, really are. And the queen's chamber to me is actually the smoking gun of the whole place, because when you get into there, and it's a small room, but on the left-hand side, there's this corbelled niche that's carved out of the wall, about 15 feet tall. And the traditional Egyptologists and archaeologists try to say, well, this was a place where they would have had, some sort of statue or idol. No statue or idol was ever found there. And no box or sarcophagus either. So, but they call it the Queen's Chamber. And straight back from this niche, about 30 meters into the wall, is this passageway that just kind of dead ends. It's like, okay, what in the world was that about? What was that for? But then on the back side, from that carved out area all the way up the top of that niche, it's blackened as if it's been burned, and the stone is melted. Something really hot happened here.
Wow.
Which was not a statue or an idol. So it adheres to some of the ideas, like Christopher Dunn's Giza power plant. I can't say whether it was a power plant or not, but definitely some sort of functionality for sure.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I think to imagine it didn't have functionality, I think is as naive as imagining that there's no life besides here on Earth. Even if you just look at what they just recently discovered about why would it go so far deep in the way that it does into the ground if there was no functionality? There would be no reason for it to do that, unless, that's when you build something like that, you're doing it for a very specific reason. The Doctors JJ Hertek and Desiree came on my podcast and they made a really convincing argument for the hydro, like that it was a water powered thing, and they showed a lot of evidence to really support that claim. It's very like pictures, evidence, and I'm sure maybe it was that as well. I don't think it. I think it probably as it is something now. And was certainly something different then. I think it's changed with the times and the civilizations that have, we're so stupid, we're just using it for tourism. But I'm sure that people before us had a much better reason for using this incredible feat of, construction and technology. It just speaks to the human race that we're like, just come take a look, everyone. People were buried here.
Right.
Like, what?
I was having a conversation with Trevor Grossi a little while ago. He's the guy that broke the news for the Coffer Project and those large chambers that are under there.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I had him on my show. We're chatting for a while. He's also come on the Egypt tour a couple of times, so which is great. And we went to the Egyptian labyrinth this last time with him, and he's been doing a lot of work with that, so that was cool. But we are discussing the possibilities of that functionality, some sort of functionality there with water, because one of the questions that people kept throwing out there was, that would be so far into the ground, you're going to run into an issue with the water table. And we were discussing, there are other areas on the Giza Plateau that we know of, that we've known of, for 100 years, like the Osiris Shaft. We've known of that for 90 years, and you can take tours down into it. And by the way, a lot of it is underwater. You have to think in ancient times, the Nile River was closer
Much
to the
closer. Yeah.
Giza Plateau. Yeah, much closer. And the water table, therefore, would have been
Yeah.
much higher there. So when they were digging out something like the Osiris Shaft, well, they weren't chipping away at the limestone underwater. They
No.
had to have done something to divert the water away so they could, chisel this whole thing out that goes, like 120 feet into the ground. And some of these
Right.
scans that they're coming out with now are showing that there are chambers even deeper than that under the Osiris Shaft.
Wow.
So, yeah, they would have had to have done something with the water. So, were those big chambers under the
Yeah.
plateaus some sort of, I don't know,
Hydropower
reservoir?
plant, yeah.
Yeah,
Or reservoir, who, maybe we'll never know. Maybe we'll know one day when we
hmm
get our shit together. But I think it was definitely a power source in more than one way. And
I
I
do
think
too.
there's a reason why the pyramid is such an important, geometrical structure, and why we find them not just in Egypt, but I mean, I feel like
Yeah.
we've probably discovered half of them. I think the other half are still underground, somewhere, either deliberately buried or just, over the thousands and thousands of years buried, because I feel like they've been here since we got here,
Oh yeah.
and we keep finding new ones. And we're like, oh, well, it turns out that under that mound was a pyramid. Oh, no shit. Wow.
Yeah, no
Like
kidding.
how are there pyramids all around the planet? Who people just don't stop and think, like, who had that idea, and
Yeah.
how did they get there?
There were connections, and that's something I talk about all the time when I start talking about the connected universe. Is, there was, you could call it a worldwide culture, or they had some other form of communication or ways to connect, because there's too many synchronicities between, you look at the step pyramid at Saqqara, and then you look at Chichen Itza, and they're
Hmm.
eerily similar. You see all kinds of shared symbolism, like whether it's the snakes or the spirals or the handbags of pine cones. You find these representations meaning the same thing
Mm.
throughout cultures all over the world. So they had some sort of connection that we're not, traditional academia just isn't recognizing.
No, Graham Hancock is.
Yeah, Graham is.
Graham's like, damn it,
Yeah, Graham's done a
Scrooge.
great job, and he's
Yeah,
taken a lot of flack for it, but
I know, which is
good for him to keep saying it. Yeah,
I know. He's relentless. He doesn't care. He's used to it by now.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, we need people like Graham and yourself who are willing to write about things that fucking academia doesn't accept, because we all know now more than ever who runs academia
Right.
and how little they want us to actually know.
Mhm.
But
They just want to keep us in our own little lives, and
yeah, that
that's
way
it.
we don't start to ponder too many things and ask too many questions. And I tell people all the time, it's like, people think that the UFO cover up is about like, I don't know what people think, that it's a joke, but people think that it's meaningless. It wouldn't affect them. And I'm like, if a civilization showed up here and they were 20,000, 50,000, 1 million years ahead of us, and they started to look at our society, and we wanted to ask them questions about theirs, what do
Mhm.
you think would happen to this insane, uh, you know, totalitarian, centralized structure that is in place to keep us going to work and paying for the food that there's more than enough for everyone for? What do you think would happen to the oligarch and the powers that be if this was allowed to come to fruition? It would. This is a threat to them, and they treat it as so. And I think some of these secrets we're talking about, they're also a threat, because they
Yeah.
speak to a civilization that did not have this kind of control grid in place.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about control, and everything that we've seen here with the congressional hearings and all that. It's controlling the narrative. It
Hmm.
basically got to the point where they could no longer just deny everything. They couldn't blanket deny and say no, it's not real. And you could, 30, 60
Yeah,
years ago,
for a long
whatever.
time there.
Yeah,
He's just a crazy quack drinking
yeah,
moonshine farmer, like, wait,
Exactly.
everyone?
And you'd have photos that were blurry, or it's just, some lights up in a dark sky, and, you can't really see what's going on. So they would come up with a bevy of different excuses for it.
Hmm.
But nowadays, everybody's running around with an HD or better camera in their pocket with their cell phones. And,
Yeah.
they're capturing all this great footage. So, yeah, the government basically figured out, well, we can't deny it anymore, but let's still try to control
Control the
narrative
narrative.
as
Yeah.
best we can. So, yeah.
It's a threat.
Yeah, the threat.
Be afraid.
Yeah.
Listen to what we tell you to do and do it. Yeah, that's the government for you. I mean, that's what other function could they have? If they didn't do that, they would be forced to all retire. But what was I going to
It's
say?
got the conversation going, and at
Yeah,
least
I mean,
more people
it's-
now recognize, okay, we weren't crazy the whole time.
Yeah, and I feel bad for the ones that, have been dismissed. I mean, now that, it takes a long time to change decades of propaganda and a narrative that says that people who talk about this are cuckoo, like, and then you have to get the public to reacclimate to the fact that, no, listen, it's okay to talk about. You're not going to be characterized as a nut job and written about in the, in the tabloids. It's going to take a while. The propaganda psyops are real. The propaganda is real, and it had its effect. People, you ask a boomer, start talking about them UFOs, you watch their eyes glaze over. But even they're coming around a little bit. So
They are, yeah.
yeah.
I have several members of my family that, back in the day, they wouldn't have said anything about it, but now I think people are more comfortable now talking about, since there are more and more people coming forward. It's like, oh, okay,
Totally.
I'm not crazy after all. These other people are having experiences and
Oh yeah.
sharing their stories, so I can share mine. So it's been interesting just to see the evolution of this over the years.
Yeah, and what's great is it's just begun in a real way. I mean, it was happening before, but it was so completely anonymous and clandestine. Now you have people like, who have actually worked on crash retrieval programs personally, having the courage, and being kept, preserved enough to come forward and at least give testimony on record of what they actually worked on personally. Before that, it was always secondhand. It was always, well, I read this, well, I saw this report. You had intelligence officers like William Cooper, who had been read in on everything going on with the UFO cover up for 10 years while he worked in intelligence for when he was in charge of intelligence for the whole Navy, the Pacific Fleet. And he was like, I read shit every day that I knew with every fiber of my being that I could never tell a single soul in America because they would never believe a fucking word of it. Yeah. And I imagine, like that was his job for 10 years. He was like, every day things came across my desk that I could have read out loud to the public. They would have never believed a word of it. He said, this was my life, for so many years. I'm like, so exciting, but yet so kind of torturous,
Yeah, and I have to hand it to those that come forward, that have been in those positions and are talking about it, because having been in that position myself, I mean, you have to be careful with what you do say and what you do talk about, because some of the things and some of the positions that you're in, there's still a lot of classified information within there that if you say the wrong thing, they can come.
Oh, the Men in Black, they showed up for him. They ran him off the road twice. Mm-hmm. And the second time he broke his leg, and then he survived. And they came to his house. He tells the story. He was like, they came and they sat down and they said, are you going to shut up? And he said, yep. And they said, good. We don't want to have to come back. And they left. And for 16 years, he did. He shut up. And then he saw an article about, kind of a project, a Blue Beam article.
Yeah.
About and he was like, oh God, he was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just going to come forward. I'm going to tell everyone, because he had a lot of the, he was working in the early 50s. So he had a lot of copies of what he had been working on, and he was in charge of them. And so he just put together this giant dead man's trigger, and he mailed out like 40,000 documents to news stations around the world. He spent like $35,000 on a mailing and then decided to start talking about it, started a radio show. Of course, they eventually gunned him down in his driveway shortly after
Right.
9/11.
Yeah.
But he did get the word out, and he is legend. So God bless him wherever he is. Rest
Absolutely.
in peace. You know, what's the strangest case you've ever come across? Would you say?
Oh my gosh. Like anything, like as far as things that
Like,
I've worked on.
yeah, like you open it wide up. I know you've worked on a wide array of different phenomena.
Yeah, yeah. That's a good question because yeah, I have worked on a lot of different things. I think the first thing that just kind of popped in my mind as far as like in an official case, and it was one that we um, shot for The Haunt. It was the first television show that I was ever on. This is back we shot that in 2010. I think it aired the following spring, 2011, and that one was we were a paranormal investigative team at the time that we were helping out this family, and we brought in many times to try to figure out what was going. They kept seeing this thing with red eyes, and it was basically terrorizing the house. It was interesting. We were talking before about not people not communicating, and people are because they think you're going to be crazy,
Yeah, I think
or
we
whatever.
call it crazy. Yeah.
Well, this family, they'd been experiencing this phenomenon for 20 years, and nobody in the household ever said anything about it to each other until one day where the activity finally amped up enough, and the daughter was like, have you guys been seeing this? And all of a sudden, this like around the dinner table, it comes all the stories from 20 years. Yeah, so we were brought in, we're investigating for a while. Strange things are happening, and somehow the television show got involved, and that was the person who ran the group that had that connection. So okay, the family wants a cleansing, so we're going to go ahead and do that for the television. They had some of our investigation footage, and then we're going to do the cleansing of the house for television. So brought out Carl Johnson, who is a demonologist who worked on ghost hunters, and we were talking earlier about the Conjuring house. So he and I became fast friends during this particular case, and so he was the one that got me into the Conjuring house. Yeah, and he's a part of my docu-series, The Shadow Dimension. Cool. So we brought him out, and we're cleansing the house, just going from room to room, and he's kind of blessing different areas, and we had the family stay outside in the side yard, but the daughter, Taliesin, came in, and adult daughter, she was like early 20s, and or mid 20s, whatever she was, and she needed to use the restroom. So fine, she goes into the restroom in the master bedroom, and when she finishes, she comes out, and all of a sudden she's in the bedroom, and she's like talking at something at the wall. She sees something, and she's like, why are you here? Why do you keep terrorizing us? Why do you keep doing these different things? And so we went into the bedroom, and Carl decides to do a blessing over her. And then all of a sudden, she doubled over in pain, like she just got punched in the gut. Wow. Falls to the ground. And so, we pick her up, we get her on the bed, and she's okay. She comes to. When I listened over my audio after the fact, there was a voice that you could hear right as she was getting punched in the gut that said "die." I was like, wow. Yeah. Now the television show used that earlier in the show during one of our investigations. Like, this was the reason why we were going to cleanse the house. It's like, why did you move that? It was so much more powerful where it actually happened.
Stupid TV.
Yeah, I know, TV. So. So she's okay, but then all of a sudden other bizarre things started happening around the house. So we had a tri-field meter set up in Talison's bedroom by the closet where she kept seeing this this entity routinely. That thing starts going off, starts chirping, beep, beep, beep. The back door of the house leading out of the master bedroom to the backyard, that blows open. Close it. Blows open again. This happens like 3 times. Wow. Finally just, deadbolt the whole thing so it's not going to blow open anymore. Carl does this blessing over the door. So all this crazy stuff is going on inside. So we continue with this cleansing, and we're pushing it outside. We get into the backyard, and the wind had like really, really kicked up. Carl's out there and he's like blessing the backyard. He's
You're
having
right.
to shout over this wind. We got the
Wow.
cats running around in circles around us.
Oh, damn! Did you get that on tape?
Yeah, that was all on tape. That was all put in.
People would have been like,
all
"What the
really
fuck?"
happened.
Wow.
Bizarre. And then finally there's like this last big gust of wind. The wind dies down. Carl falls to a knee. He's exhausted. And he's like, it's gone. It's gone. Like, okay, awesome. So it's like, worked. It's successful.
Wow.
We went over to the side yard to tell the family that we were done. And so we're talking about some of the things that happened. We're like, yeah, that wind was really wild the way it kicked up like that.
They were like, what wind?
Exactly. The family was like, what wind?
We didn't.
So
wow.
That was a fascinating case. It was the only one that I've ever been on. I've had done a lot of paranormal investigations over the years, but it was the only one that was ever considered demonic.
Wow. And so did you find out anything about the history of the house and or the property, and
yeah, that was my role. I served as the group's historian. And well, we found out about the house, and we were talking about ancient land anyway, so it's hard to know exactly what was on the land before, except we know it was Native American territory. But the house was built in the 1950s. The original homeowner had brought his father into the home, and the father basically stayed in the bedroom that Taliesin was sleeping in, and he had grown very depressed and despondent and took his life in that room, unfortunately. The
one strike against
the homeowner. The homeowner, some years later, he and the wife are not having they're not having a good time. They're arguing all the time and all that. He takes out a pistol during the middle of one of their arguments and tries to kill himself right in front of her, and he failed. He basically just blew a hole into his face.
Oh God.
So there's bad history. And there was a retired police officer that we interviewed. I could not find the actual data for this case that he talked about. Everything else I was able to find. But this retired police officer told us about how there was a teenage boy who accidentally asphyxiated himself in the closet.
The fuck?
Yeah, so it's like there was a lot of real bad history to the house. So the question became, was it the activity these people, or was there something there before, probably the land that was making the people do this stuff?
Yeah, probably both. Usually it's like you said, everything is interconnected,
Exactly.
Like the parent farmhouse was fascinating. It's just fascinating the way the parents found it and were just so drawn to it, and it had such a dreamy mystique to it, and they were just fell in love with it, and they couldn't spend all their money and move there, and then they get there, and of course it's like the trap has been set,
right. All these crazy things are happening. And some of it was good, like the ghost that they called Manny. I mean, he just seemed to be a nice, regular guy.
Yeah.
Then you had all kinds of other creepy things that would happen. So, Andrea's, and I'm good friends with Andrea, the eldest daughter.
How's she doing?
She's recovering. She seems to be in better spirits these days.
That's good,
which is good. So it was a shock when it's like, whoa, Andrea, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
But she's a trooper. She battles through everything.
I read her book. Good. And of course, having worked on the movie, she probably wouldn't. Well, I mean, I'm very divorced from that entire scene, but I know that they didn't. New Line Cinema does things one way, like the mafia. You know what I mean? So I understand. The parents probably aren't so fond of them either. Well, I'm on 13.
I mean, it was like maybe 2%. Like they got the names right.
And they gave him a little bit of money.
Right.
Tell Andrea, if it's any consolation, they screwed everyone over. They screwed everyone over. Even the people who brought them the $1 billion franchise, they turned into The Conjuring. They screwed them. They screwed us over too. So it's just interesting. But I read her book, and and it's an interesting journey she takes, and how she found her way to the light through what happened.
Yeah.
um, but like so obviously that was an exception. For the most part, you've been on these things, like this activity. Has it been like, what would you attribute it to? Like is it because obviously when stuff like this happens, supernatural stuff happens, it tends to scare human beings because it's not really something that we're used to,
We tend to fear what we don't understand. Yeah.
Yeah, but oftentimes, just like with the abduction phenomenon, when you start to take, like like if you go see a horror movie and you block your ears, you're like, oh, wait a minute, it's not scary. In other words, if you take away what's inducing the fear, all of a sudden you realize that this is no threat.
Right.
I can just kind of look at this, and I think for the most part, for a lot of these things, that that's kind of what's happening. I think there are some places, like the one you just spoke of, and like Skinwalker, where there's been a lot of whatever negative interdimensional energy allowed to come through. And those are, but I think that's the exception to the supernatural rule. Yeah. Like, what's your experience with that? Like with ghosts?
In my book, A Walk in the Shadows, that's something that I do try to explain to the reader, because you have people that will say, this is specifically a guide on shadow people, and some of my experiences others have had, and there's a large contingent of people out there that are like, well, all shadow people are evil, dark, nefarious, so they're darker of the dark and all this sort of thing. And I'm like, well, yeah, maybe a couple of them are, but really, to me, they're like people. You have some that are good, some that are bad. Most are just in the middle somewhere.
Yeah.
They have their own agendas. They have their own
like
lives.
Humans.
Yeah, like humans. And what we're really seeing is just, it's the way that our eyes are taking in the light, and because it's something that we don't usually see. We chalk it up to term supernatural, which I love. Quote from Dr. Hans Holzer years ago. He's like, there is no supernatural world. Everything that's around us is quite natural. So, the idea that these things are a very natural part of our universe. We just don't usually see them, so we don't, we don't know what to make of it all. So, so it's the way our eyes are taking in the light. If it is interdimensional, because it can be a lot, whatever the entity is, whether it's what we might call an ET, what we might call a shadow person, what we might call a ghost, whatever. There can be a lot of different things, whether it's interdimensional or extraterrestrial, or, it could even be a time slip or something like that.
Sure.
We only see into a very, very narrow band of the spectrum. We have, according to our theoretical physics, up to 11 hyperspatial dimensions. Our consciousness is on the fourth, which we call time, and we have access to all the ones below that. Three-dimensional objects and everything, but those other dimensions, 5, 6, 7, 8 onward, we don't normally see those. We don't have the proper geometry to be able to see them properly, and sometimes they bleed into our world, and our eyes can't make sense of exactly what it is. Sometimes
they bleed in visually. They bleed in, through the five senses. We get feelings. We get like, where did they come from? I think as we ascend our consciousness, we're acclimating to greater and greater perception, and it's easier for some than others, I think, and that's why it's funny. One woman at the Conscious Life Expo said, she's great. She had a crazy name. She spoke about the inner child, I think, but she said, God, she had a thick, I almost want to say Dutch or Swiss accent, but she was like, well, I started hearing voices, and so it was either figure my shit out or go to the mental institution. So I decided to figure my shit out, and she's obviously like a clairvoyant, clairaudient, and but people get put away for having what I think is most of the time this extrasensory perception that they have no means to govern, that they're not taught is actually a natural phenomenon that you can learn to deal with, work with. I mean, this woman has, made a career of what she's learned from, from allowing those voices and making peace with them and using them as guides instead of something to be afraid of and think she's crazy about. So it's just, it's a fun time to be alive, isn't it?
It is because, yeah, like you were saying, before you used to get locked up for, talking about these
Yeah.
sorts of things, and they throw away the key, find yourself in a straitjacket. But now, over the last probably 30 years or so, people have been a lot more open to this. And I think, really, what's helped in large part, two things: the internet and the television shows. And I understand that,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of that stuff with television thrown out the window. I mentioned earlier, hey, they took one part of our experience and they put it into another place, so it wasn't telling the full story. They also made it look like, they were having these experiences for 20 years, called us up one day, here we go, this is it. It's like, no, we've been working with them for like a year.
Yeah.
But what it has done is, it has helped to show people that no, there are others that are having these types of experiences. You are
Yeah.
not alone, and it makes people more comfortable to open up and share theirs. And so, like when I started really opening up more and sharing my experiences was, mid to late 90s. People are jumping onto this new thing called the internet, and there's
Chat
forums,
rooms and
chat rooms, yeah, Yahoo groups, all that stuff. And you're jumping into those and finding, yeah, there are other people that have had these experiences. Because, I was pretty much in a small town when I was in high school experiencing things. And so nobody's talking about it there. You go to the library, it's like you have a very, very small selection of books, and it's not on this
yeah.
type of subject matter. So, yeah. So that I think has really, really helped people over the last 30 years. And so now people are more apt to talk about it. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, we're not as crazy as people once thought.
No, definitely not. I had recently had Dr. Paul Smith, pretty well known remote viewer, on my show talking about Pat Price, who I'm sure you've come across his name a few times.
Oh, yeah.
Pat Price, who he
Another
remote
one
viewed.
died.
Yeah, very suspicious. I think people are like, well, he did have a heart condition. I was like, yeah, but I mean, he was,
Why did they
at the
cremate
age
him
and
before his
with
wife
man
would identify him? I mean,
come on. I mean, give me a break. I mean, there was so many things about that made it extremely suspicious, let alone the fact that he was literally on the run when it happened. Like he was like, I got to go. He was running from something when he suddenly had the heart attack. Anyway. Yeah. If you guys want to learn more about, Pat Price, watch Third Eye Spies. You'll get a good sense of what he was about.
that's a good one. Yeah.
But so Dr. Paul Smith was on the show, and he was talking about Pat, who remote viewed something very interesting in Alaska. Did you ever hear about that?
Yeah, so that was he remote viewed Mount Hayes. And yeah, he actually remote viewed a number of different locations around the globe.
Yeah.
With that, and handed it to I think he handed it to Hal Puthoff, that information. It kind of got pushed down the line, and people became very interested in what Pat had discovered. So yeah, with Mount Hayes, he basically had viewed the military and some extraterrestrials working together in there. We covered that on the Alaska Triangle. They sent James Fox up there to go check it out. Basically, another thing with television. Yeah, we're gonna fly, land on a glacier, have a look around real quick. We don't see anything, but
yeah,
it was just really to try to help the storytelling. It's not like they were gonna actually, oh, here's the hatch and let's go down.
Not like they would let you anywhere near the. Yeah, you can't even go near the Grand Canyon where they found that underground city.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, they get the black choppers will come out and scare you off.
Yeah, they'll hunt you down, and that's interesting. That whole Mount Hayes area, because Fort Greely is not too far from that, and tons of UFO sightings around that area.
Oh
yeah, it's like right in the heart of the triangle up there.
I feel like the further north and the further south you go, the more activity you're going to find, because I think it's much easier for them, ours and theirs, to come and go, from there. I mean, I think it's easy in general because of the speed they can achieve, but I think it just makes most sense that they'd be doing it out of the poles, which is why I think the poles are so kind of off limits,
Quite off limits, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no fly zones. Wait,
You're right.
what? Why not?
Mhm.
So, so people often bring up one case, like the disappearance of Congressman Hale Boggs.
Yeah.
What happened there, do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting because that one actually did involve some nasty weather, and yeah, the last time they heard from the pilot, um, Don Johns, he said, "Yeah, everything's okay. We're headed into the Portage Pass," and nothing. Um, Nothing's ever been found. I mean, it became the largest search and rescue mission in U.S. history. They utilized spy planes. I
Wow.
mean, you're talking about this was the House Majority Leader, and Begich was a congressman. So, very, very high profile case.
Mm.
Still to this day, I've never found anything. There have been times that the families wanted to reopen the case because of other information that has come to light. There was a guy that had connections to organized crime some years back that came forward and was basically fessing up to a lot of his different crimes and involvement with different organizations. And one of them, he had mentioned putting some sort of package or briefcase or something of this nature onto that plane before it took off. So some of the ideas are, okay, was it, was this
Yeah.
like an act of terrorism or something? Was it an assassination or whatever? Did the plane explode? They did not reopen the case based on the fact that not only had they scoured it back in 1972, but that since then other planes have gone down and crashed in that area, and in retrieving those planes never found anything related to the Boggs Begich
Wow.
disappearance. So yeah, so they did not reopen it based on that.
Wow. What was he in? What was he putting his nose into? Is the question. What was the motivation for making him disappear?
He was a dissenter of the Warren Commission. So the Warren
Oh,
Commission's finding of the JFK assassination, he was very vocal about that.
there you have it. Motivation found. Yeah, my God, man, I did so much research on JFK, and what really struck me, something that people don't realize, and that I mention often because I want more people to be aware. Like, when JFK was assassinated, you had the remnants of journalistic integrity in this country really take stock of themselves and step up, and insist that there be some kind of justice for this horrific slaying of our president, who was actually trying to do some good for the people. And I read case after case, person after person, man and women, just like hunted down and made unalive, and each and every one of them thought, this is America. I'm a journalist. We have freedom of press, that this Constitution and this country is going to protect my right to do my job. And of course, when you're dealing with people who will kill a president, they're not going to hesitate to kill a journalist that's going to expose them. And so just like 15 of the most hardworking, incredible journalists who were investigating that, who got really close to the truth, were found in the most ludicrous, kind of Clinton-esque suicides, and two shotgun shells to the back, and it's a suicide.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
wait, what?
Magic bullet,
Yeah.
Which,
crazy.
what's
Man.
interesting is my mother had kept the newspapers from when Kennedy was assassinated. She was a big JFK supporter in her younger years, and so kept all those newspapers. She handed them to me some years ago, and it's just kind of looking through them the one day, and the first printing of the Plain Dealer here in Cleveland with the article, which of course is coming straight out of Dallas, talked about multiple shooters. Very first initial articles were about multiple shooters, and all of a sudden, nope, it's a magic bullet.
Always find primary sources. Always find. I mean, I've like I said, I'm so knee deep in this. I found hours of testimony of people
Mhm.
talking about all the different shooters. None of it made the Warren Commission's report. None of it made the court. Like they literally just strong armed these poor Texans into saying what they wanted them to say. I mean, one guy even said, "Well," I mean, I listened to him for 25 minutes talk about the shots he heard behind the grassy knoll, and then the last 2 minutes of his testimony, he's like, "Well, I realize now that I had to have had it wrong because they told me that shots came from the bookstore." I was like, "No, you didn't have it wrong. You had it right, man."
You had it right the whole time.
My
Yeah.
God, but that's what they do.
Yep.
So, they're good at it. But wow, man.
Yeah, they'll
So
just keep pushing to get you to play along with the narrative.
yeah, and God, has it ever been clearer that they are masters of gaslighting and denial? Even when they're literally caught red-handed, they're just like, "I don't know what you're talking about." I'm like,
Yeah, what? Yep.
It's a whole new level of gaslighting that we're experiencing these days.
It really is. Yeah.
Incredible. The other thing I wanted to ask you about, I mean, I was reading your book about time, and of course, I enjoy it immensely, and it's something that's hard to talk about. It's hard to get people interested in because it can become so abstract, the conversation. But obviously, time is experiential, and it is part of something that we live in, like I tell my kids, like, if you want to understand space time, then just figure out how long it's going to take you to walk to the bathroom, because you're going to have to drag your ass to get there. And
Right.
that's how time is measured. It's measured in space, and the two you can't separate them. At least not in a physical mass sense, but your book delves into a lot of fascinating concepts. I was getting into it. I was just trying to figure out the best way to bring it up, so what is your theory, if you could summarize it, on time, and why do you think most people what do you think they need to understand about it that they're missing?
Yeah. Well, yeah, good segue. Sometimes you just have to say, all right, we're going to talk about time travel now. Yeah, I think the best way to try to explain it is try to give people examples and some visuals and this sort of thing. So, the moment I say, hey, time doesn't really exist, people are like, what do you mean time doesn't exist? I experience time all the time. Like you said, it's experiential. But really, time it's a human construct that we've devised to try to help describe our reality. And it helps us to do things like show up to work at the right moments, or bosses don't get upset, catch the bus,
Right.
all those sorts of things. It's a helpful tool. But when we talked a little bit earlier about the dimensions, 11 hyperspatial dimensions, 0 through 10, like we have access to three-dimensional objects from our fourth dimension of time, those other dimensions, 5, 6, 7, 8, and onward, have access to time like we do those 3D objects. And that's kind of what they were trying to show in the film the film Interstellar, where at the end, and kind of it lost some people there at the end. We're like, what's going on? We were in this whole big space opera film, and now what is this Tesseract?
Right.
But he could literally see every single moment of his daughter's bedroom because he was outside of time. So this is their physical representation of that in the film, and he just had to pick the right moment to deliver the message. So when we talk about time, we usually talk about, we're in the river of time, we're caught in the flow. So if you were to in time, in that analogy, is the water, but it's not. The water doesn't make itself move. It's basically the banks of the river holding it in place as it goes. But if you remove those banks from the river, then it all spills out and becomes just like giant lake or pond or whatever.
Right.
All the water's there for you to see, and you can move around from one point in the pond to the other. So that tells us that our our universe, our world, our dimension has some sort of rule set applied to it to keep that time moving. Another way to look at it is, take a small town that you're driving through, and maybe the road is like 35 miles an hour, and you pass by a couple of houses, a gas station, a church, a general store. Maybe it takes you 5 minutes to drive through the town. So you have a relationship in time to that town. Well, now let's say instead of driving through it, you're flying over the top, and you look out the window and you see all the little houses and the gas
Yeah.
station, the general store, all that. So it's all right there all at once. So what you once had a relationship with in time, you now have a relationship in space, and it's all there concurrently for you to see.
Yeah. I was just I'm listening to Project Hail Mary with my kids. They're
Okay.
they're 12 and 14. And I picked it because my 12-year-old I'm trying to get him into more complex literature, than he tends to enjoy, like, Captain Underpants and shit like that, like, these kids.
Right.
And I knew that because I had read the book that the humor, he would enjoy the humor, and I was right. And so he's gotten into it with us, but I'm trying to, it's not a spoiler, but for people who haven't read the book, read the book, especially if you're going to see the movie, read the book, because the book is really good. I don't know how the movie will be, but it tends to not be as good as the book. But there's a part where he's trying to explain relativity to this other being from a different planet who has never been off-world, and whose understanding of physics is Newtonian and not, the theory of relativity and relativist. Like, what happens if me and my twin brother are born, and then I take off on a supersonic,
Right.
light speed out into, all this time is going to pass for him, but not for me. I'm not going to age the way he does. I was trying to explain to them that has to do with speed, and it was a tough conversation. I'm not sure I did a good job of it, but it's that's another thing that's really fascinating that we don't think about so much. But, like, you can, I don't want to say bend time, but I mean, how else do you describe what happens if I move away from the Earth fast enough? I'm going to literally leave it behind, in time. As I experience it, it's not going to be the same experience for them. A few years are going to pass for me, and like 20 years are going to pass for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, something along those lines.
Yeah, you have that. Well, they've actually done that with the twin astronauts. They put one up on the space station for a while, and they technically, and again, this is time as a record keeper here on Earth. That they were like a couple milliseconds off now because of that difference in time. Basically, as you move up further and further away from the gravitational pull of the Earth, time works a little bit differently. Again, that's our experience of it. But if you just have a wristwatch counting 1 second, 1 second, 1 second, it's interesting to kind of get your head around, like, the same amount of time technically will pass, but the way that we keep track of time on Earth is different than the way we would keep track of it out in space. And they're trying to put time zones up on the moon now and all this bizarre stuff.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. So it's all about the way we keep track of it. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting because, a lot of funny things happen to time when you're dealing with some of these places and experiences, whether they be under the umbrella of supernatural or under the guise of, I shouldn't say guise, but under the experience of extra dimensional, extraterrestrial,
Right.
like, you have these time dilations that happen, and people often, it's like, listen, every time you go to sleep, what's going on with you? Where does your mind go? I mean, in a sense, you're experiencing something of that, because when you wake up, time has passed. Where did you go? Nowhere. But you definitely went somewhere. Yeah. So it's just it's a fascinating conversation, and I
Yeah,
think that
I've had people argue with me the time dilation and that phenomena of time working differently here on Earth than out in space. But to me, I can easily answer that because, again, if you are outside the fourth dimension of time, you're 5, 6, 7. It doesn't matter where somewhere in the universe, if time is dilating, you're outside of that, so time is irrelevant. So and that throws people a little bit for a loop. The other one was so I have a uncle who's a retired nuclear physicist, and this is an addendum I'm going to put onto the book. I've been meaning to do that for like a year now.
Oh, cool.
With a couple of different things that I want to address. But he read it and he's like, yeah, no, I totally understand everything that you're talking about. And yeah, I can get on board with your stacked time theory, except, for one question I need to have answered here. Okay, what is it? And he says, well, physically, from, say 1980 to now, the Earth has been moving. So where we were in space physically is different now than it was back then.
Yeah.
So how do you account for, if time doesn't exist and you take where you're sitting and every moment that has happened is happening and will happen, all concurrent. How do you account for the fact that, where you're sitting is in a different physical location in the universe than it was 30 years ago? And I'm like, that's a great question, Uncle Bill. Yeah, I got to pause for a moment by myself sometime. I'm like, but it came right away. It was like entanglement, quantum entanglement. He just said, yeah, that'll work.
Wow.
So, yeah, the moments entangled on the quantum level, keeping it all in check and all connected.
Yeah, and that's the final frontier, I think, of our understanding of time is going to be in that area of science, which is only just really being explored. Yeah, because when you start talking about time, and it's such a it's such a phenomenon. Like I read this one study, maybe you've heard of it, about these scientists. Well, actually, it was these doctors who were getting their doctorate in Israel, and they couldn't, they had to come up with their own ideas, and this guy didn't have a lot of resources, so he just used what he had. He went and he visited a hospital, and he asked them if he could use some of their old files. And they said okay, and they were the files that they had on people who were brought in for sepsis. And he pulled them and he put them into two sections. I mean, it's a simple but brilliant experiment he did. And so he divided them, and then he got his students. He got half his students to pray for half of the pile, and the other half to just do nothing to the pile. Mm-hmm. And then what he found was that the half that was prayed for had statistically significant better outcomes across the board. They got out of the hospital sooner. They didn't die as often. They like there was a measurable difference. That was the happy ending half, and the other half was the didn't do so well with dealing with the sepsis. And of course, sepsis, you don't hear much about it because it's kind of something that we've figured out how to keep people healthy from. And he didn't tell the students that these files were 10 years old.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So again, time. Mm-hmm. I try to explain it to people, and they're like, "Wait, what?" but I think you understand what I'm saying. Yeah. I believe that we have the ability to affect outcomes, not just in the present, but in the future, in the past. I think we're doing it all the time. I don't think if we ever put our minds to it, it would be really interesting to see what we could do. But this experiment was really incredible, and it showcased that. And I have a friend, Adam Curry, who he's a scientist, and he works studying these types of phenomena. Dean Radin is another legend in this field. He studies, what people used to call magic. I mean, we know it's energy now, but how it can affect it can transcend time. So it's just it's very, very interesting. There's so much that we have yet to learn about time and how we can interact with it, I think.
Yeah, everything comes down to frequency, resonance, energy, vibration. And so yeah, each of these moments in time have their own frequency. And when you have, especially people in mass like that, setting an intention, setting a frequency to be able to influence, it will absolutely influence whatever it is that they're setting out to do.
That's right. And it doesn't matter if it will sort, the universe will sort it out one way or the other. You know what I mean? Like, it's just amazing how that works, but it speaks to how powerful we are when we put our hearts and intentions on something. It's such a cool experiment that guy did. I hope he got an A.
I hope so.
Because he caught a lot when he published it. There was, my God, so much controversy about the people were like, oh, it was actually a joke. I'm like, no, it's not a joke. It's actually a published paper.
Yeah,
I'm gonna try to find the
that's fascinating research right there. It's a fascinating experiment.
Yeah, put it on screen. But because I got into with my editor's like, no, it was a joke. I'm like, no, it was not a joke. Look again, it's an actual experience. People are calling it a joke, but it's not a joke. It was a published paper. So some people are very material oriented.
Yeah, that's like so. Well, yeah, the all the stuff that came out of Antarctica a few years back, where you had the scientists on the Anita Project, the Ice Cube Project, with the results that they were getting from these neutrinos that were coming up out of the ground without a source. They're like, yeah, this is indicative of a parallel universe running in reverse time. And when that news first hit, traditional academia was laughing.
Oh yeah,
you had like Forbes and some other bigger news sources that were discrediting it because it was coming out of some smaller news sources or whatever. They're like, yeah, this is ridiculous. Don't listen to it. But they ended up publishing that paper and continued with the research. So now it's a published paper stating the same information. And in their continued research, because, they're studying neutrinos, which, coming from space, but they found the ones coming from the ground. Okay, let's point it down to the ground and see what other information we can get on neutrinos. And then I think it was last year, as they were continuing this, it's like, wait a minute, we're getting strange radio signals that's going thousands of miles down into the ground. It's like coming up out of that. And it's like, how is this even possible? There's rock and all this other stuff that's in the way, and the depths that they were talking about was essentially like almost the core of the earth. So
wow, was that deep?
Yeah,
interesting. I would have guessed it was just some of the bases there, but if it was coming that deep, then
it was,
wow. God, it makes you wonder.
Yeah, where it's coming from, you're not going to have a base because it's all molten.
No, yeah, I mean, you don't need to go nearly that far to have a nice, comfortable base in Antarctica. Even a mile under the ice, the geothermal. I mean, it's one of the most volcanic regions of the planet. People don't ever realize or think about it, but they came out with a study. It was about, I want to say, maybe like 10 years ago now, and they found actually the most volcanic region on the planet is Antarctica. and under the ice is a honeycomb that is, according to their measurements and the readings they took, is a balmy 65, 70 degrees once you get a mile under the ice. I'm like, you mean to say it would be conducive to people living there without heaters? Wow, there's a fucking surprise.
Yeah, there was a Russian team that's been drilling Lake Vostok there for a long, long time. And this is one of those that's like a couple miles down under the ice. And the volume of it is greater than that of Lake Ontario.
Wow.
But yeah, it's from the geothermal heating.
It's crazy. It's so cool. I hope one of these days enough of the ice melts where we can just take a peek and see everything they've been hiding. Although it's probably
I'm sure there's a lot down there, and that's always fun to speculate about.
Yeah,
because we talk, in our circles we talk about, what might be hidden under there. Are there pyramids that are there under the ice? Is the technology that they use to build some of these ancient structures hidden on the ice? It would make a lot of sense as to why, like during World War II, you had Hitler sending teams down there to
even before Hitler, Germany
he was
was
trying to gather all these
yeah,
powerful items around him. So did he hear about something?
something was going on. Yeah, because even before Hitler, the Germans were like, you know what? Let's take an expedition. It was like, I think the first one was like in 1914. I was like, what, did they go by foot? Like they were going long before they even had the subs to take them. They were making, something was drawing the Germans to Antarctica for a long time, and it only got busier and busier. They were going back and forth all the time. We got the radar scans to prove it, and that we have records of expeditions they were doing even before they had the subs that could take them right there. So to this day, America's like, we just don't talk about it, especially after Operation High Jump. But, like obviously something is there. Why else would they be going there over and over and over, And then you have William Tompkins, who came out and spoke a lot about, before he died, he gave massive testimonials to everyone he could about the shit he was working on in World War II, and going to Antarctica after the war ended and being brought down and learning that, according to him, not Hitler specifically, but the Vril, is it the Thule or the Vril Society was in communication with two different species living there. One claimed to be ET. One was actually just humans who had been underground for hundreds of thousands of years, pretending to be ETs, but saw an opportunity to get what they wanted from these people, and then the reptilians that were there, that the reptilians had bases there, and they were trying to take advantage of the war machine that Hitler had been kind of forced into building. And it's just, William Tompkins is just fascinating testimony. I don't know if you've ever seen his testimony.
I haven't, but the one I'm more familiar with is Albert K. Bender and his experiences, and because he had built the International Flying Saucer Bureau in 1952, right after the big flap there in Washington, D.C. And he blew that organization up big in a very short period of time. Like they had a division in the UK, another one in Australia. This is way pre-internet. Trying to make a long distance call was extremely expensive. So for him to blow this up big, just using snail mail within a year is amazing. And he had his quarterly newsletter and all this stuff going out. And then all of a sudden he just shut it down a year later. And everybody was like, what the heck happened? Why did he shut it down? And, people were wondering, did the Men in Black get involved? Did they shut down and all that? And then it was years later in the 60s, he wrote the book Flying Saucers and the Three Men and explained what had happened and why he shut it down. And, according to him, he was visited, some people call them the Men in Black, but he was visited by these three dark hat-wearing entities that had glowing eyes, smelled of sulfur, all this. They materialized through it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, some people say it's Men in Black. Some people say that they're
a bunch of automated grays. Yeah. What year was this?
This was 1952 is when he developed the organization. The book came out
was visited
in 63 or something like that. It's called Flying Saucers, Three Men. And so he says, these were actually extraterrestrials. And they told him he was getting too close to the truth and he was, divulging too much information. And they wanted him to stop for the meantime, because they were on a 15-year mission in Antarctica harvesting resources. And once they're done with their 15 years, then he would be free to talk about it. So,
right.
So then he finally did in the early 1960s.
Oh wow, I got to check that book out. That sounds fascinating.
It's interesting.
Yeah. Interesting. They smelled like sulfur. So did the ones in Brazil. In that incident in Brazil, they said there was a strong sulfur smell, which is kind of like the smell of brimstone. Could be a little scary for people. Yeah. You're like, what's that? It smells like hell down here. Interesting, man. Well, Mike, tell everyone about your latest book and where they can find your work, and if they want to follow you. I don't know if you're most people who are really busy aren't quite as present on social media as some of us, but tell everyone where to find you.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm all over social media. So if you want to, find me on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, all that stuff. I've got my YouTube channel
Cool.
as well. So you can hop over there, and I've got over 800 videos over there, and all these different topics. Yeah, you can find me on my website, MikeRicksecker.com. My latest series of books, Travels Through Time, Portals to the Stars. That's kind of setting everything up, so time and time travel. And then stargates and portals, and then the next one will be on the interdimensional universe. My latest
Nice.
book actually is Archive of the Connected Universe, so it's a lot of my material that didn't make it into the books, so it's kind of a compendium to go along with
Cool.
everything else. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome, Mike. Well, listen, man, I'm I'm glad we got to meet. I'm
Yeah.
sorry we couldn't do this in person, but it's been a fascinating conversation. I'm just getting in. I'm just diving into all your work, so I'm
Thank you.
excited to continue to explore it, and I'm sure we'll have another conversation again soon. Let me know when your next book's coming out, and I'm gonna check out some of the references you made, some of the books, and some of the documentaries you mentioned, because it's right up my alley, man. But it's been great. I appreciate your time very much.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you having me. And yeah, if you want to get a little sneak tour of the real Conjuring farmhouse, that was on the Shadow Dimension
Oh,
docuseries. So
cool. I'll check it out.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's it's on Tubi and Roku channel. So
I will definitely check that out.
yeah, but
Interesting,
thank you
man.
so much for having me. I really do
You,
appreciate it. And yeah, I'll definitely let you know when the next one's coming out. And looking forward to talking with you again.
thank you, brother. My pleasure. For everyone who is listening on iTunes and Spotify, please don't forget to drop us a couple stars if you enjoyed us. Maybe drop a comment. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe. We know that most people who are watching never subscribe, never press the subscribe button. So please do that. And if you want to support me and my work, I'm also on Patreon. We have a great community we're building there. We got some really cool customizable merch for some of you guys in the other upper tiers. And thank you guys again for listening. Mike, thank you for hanging in with me. And it's been real, brother.
It
Thank you so
has.
much.
Thank you. Thanks again.
Take care, man. Thank you.